It's hard not to love the Surface Laptop Go. Microsoft basically took its premium Surface Laptop style, shrunk it down, and put in a 12.4-inch screen to create a really cute and adorable machine. And best of all, it starts at $549. How can you have a problem with that? But after using the Surface Laptop Go for the past week, it's not too long before the issues really rise to the forefront. It won't take you long to learn what Microsoft compromised to create such a affordable machine. Its screen is surprisingly low res. For consumers, it maxes out with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And its case also is largely made out of plastic too, which I found kind of surprising. But here's the thing, I realize that for many users, kids and first-time PC buyers, or people who just don't really stress their machines, none of this would really matter. A miniature, adorable Surface laptop. But if you get up close, you'll notice a couple things. While the top part with the monitor has a metal case, the bottom is actually plastic. It's a polycarbonate material that Microsoft says has glass fibers woven in. It feels like really high quality plastic. It doesn't feel like something you'd find on like a cheap HP or Dell, but it's still plastic. It is not metal. Microsoft tells us that one reason they did that is just to keep the weight down, especially for a machine that may be aimed at kids. And, you know, they did do a good job of that. This machine just weighs 2.45 pounds, with a huge difference at first. But I noticed as I was testing it, that I was just handling it a little differently. I was able to, walk from room to room in my house while I'm staying here during the pandemic pretty easily. I didn't have to feel the actual weight of it. It felt more like an oversized tablet rather than a laptop. And actually, I quickly learned that, the Surface Pro 7 with the keyboard case is also 2.4 pounds. So I guess that's my gadget muscle memory kicking in there. The Surface Laptop Go's 10.5-inch screen, and I think that's a big, big difference, and it makes it more usable and workable for me. On the crammed in, it felt, it's a tablet. It felt like that's what you'd be using it for, single screen, full-sized apps. On the or a little YouTube window and, a document that I was working on. So multitasking and using it like a normal laptop just felt more natural. And like all of the Surface devices, it has a 3x2 screen, so it's a little taller than a typical widescreen laptop, which makes it more functional to me. You can read longer documents and web pages and just feel like you're more immersed in whatever you're working on. As useful as the screen is for something so small, there is a major, major downside. It is the lowest resolution screen we've ever seen on a Surface device. It has a 1536 by 1024 resolution. That's well below 1080p, and even the first Surface Go had a higher resolution screen. That's insane to me. The Laptop Go screen just has 148 pixels per inch, or PPI, and that is a stat we don't really talk about much these days because higher res displays in laptops and tablets, it just seemed like something we didn't need to talk about anymore. But 148 PPI, that's not great. That means if you lean in really close to the screen, you can definitely see pixels along the edges of fonts and words and pictures. It's something we haven't seen in notebooks for years. So Microsoft says that the reason they went with that resolution is because most users are, using their laptops from further away than a tablet like the Surface Go or Go 2. And even if that were true, I still feel like there are major downsides here. If you're binging Netflix in bed, you'll probably have the laptop maybe on your chest or close to you. There are going to be instances where you're going to be up close to this thing and the display just feels ancient and archaic. Even in direct sunlight, although I really wish Microsoft would do something about these pixel sense displays it's making, because they just black out when I look at them in my polarized sunglasses, and that's not an issue I have with many other laptops. It's really just Microsoft's. While its screen is a bit of a disappointment, it is nice to see that Microsoft is kind of modernizing its design a bit. The Surface Laptop Go has thinner bezels, nice to see. They're not as, impossibly thin as like the Dell XPS 13, but it's getting there, and it's making the Surface Laptop Go feel like more of a modern machine in that respect. So there's a weird push and pull of archaic screen resolution and modern design going on here. And throughout, something that's premium feeling while being very cost conscious. So for example, the keyboard, it is full sized. It feels as good as a typical Surface laptop keyboard with 1.3 millimeters of travel. It feels like a joy to type on. But as I started working on this review at night, I realized there is no backlight, and that is a huge disappointment, because if I'm in a low light environment, if I'm in a room where I don't want bright lights on me, similarly, the glass trackpad feels smooth and accurate to use, but it's a little small compared to what I'm used to seeing from other ultra portables. I guess that's to be expected for the size, but again, it feels a bit like a step back. Thankfully, there is one area where Microsoft didn't skimp. Every model is powered by Intel's 1035G1 chip. It's a quad-core processor that maxes out at 3.6 gigahertz, and that may not sound like much, but I think for a tiny machine like this, we saw one in the Surface Go 2, and I feel like I was maxing that thing out even while just having a few apps open. Consumers can equip the Laptop Go with up to 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage, both of which are stats that make it really clear this is letting commercial buyers equip it with up to 16 gigabytes of RAM if you go through their commercial site. I probably wouldn't recommend that though, because that model costs. The main takeaway from using the Surface Laptop Go over the past week is that it's fast enough. It managed to keep up with my workflow, which typically involves having, many browsers, dozens of browser tabs open, Evernote, Spotify, Slack, image editing. Like, it handled all that stuff just fine. Although I did feel like I was starting to get to the limits of that 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I will say that its 256 gigabyte SSD just felt immediately restrictive, because you have to have Windows on there, so that takes up a chunk of space. So as I was mainly for schoolwork and streaming video and really light computing tasks, this is just fine. And surprisingly enough, it also did a decent job battery-wise. It lasted over 12.5 hours in our battery test. To really stress the power of this machine, I ran a few games, which is not something I typically do with something aimed at the low end or middle range of the market here, but I want to see how this chip works. And I think the Intel UHD graphics were great for Minecraft, because it's running the game at a lower monitor resolution, so it was able to hit 60 FPS just fine. And it was even able to play Overwatch at the native resolution in low settings, around 40 to 50 FPS, which isn't smooth, but workable, and you could probably even reduce the resolution more to kind of make that work. This definitely isn't a gaming machine, but I think if you're getting it for your kids or something, and they may need to do some 3D apps like Minecraft for school, it at least will be able to run those. Seems to be the running theme of the Surface Laptop Go. It offers good enough performance for less demanding users. Recognition for Windows Hello, you have to use a fingerprint sensor on the power button, which is just fine. It's pretty fast and accurate from what I saw. There are only 2 accessory ports, but at least Microsoft gives you the choice of either USB Type-A or USB-C, and yes, you can charge over USB-C, but it also comes with the Surface charger as well for that proprietary Microsoft connector. It's also worth noting that the Surface Laptop Go picks, anything third-party or downloaded. You can turn that off from the Microsoft Store just easily. It's not a thing you have to pay for anymore. It's an annoyance, but it's kind of a security feature that's there to protect Windows users from themselves. What I'd really like to see is how well the $550 Surface Laptop Go configuration performs. That model only has 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of slow eMMC storage. That's kind of the same stuff that flash drives are made out of. You're not seeing the performance on our benchmarks from the $550 model. And I think much like the Surface Go 2, I wouldn't recommend the base model to anybody. Microsoft says they wanted to have something available to people who mainly stream content or do work, over the internet. And in that case, maybe you won't be using up to 8 gigabytes of RAM or need much storage. And that's kind of positioning this as a Chromebook competitor. But even at that price range, you could get a really nice Chromebook that is more capable and will be able to do more at $550. If you're really intrigued by the Surface Laptop Go, we'd recommend making the jump to the $700 model. That one only gets you 128 gigabytes of storage, but at least that's a faster SSD, and you'll get 8 gigabytes of RAM from there too, so you'll have a lot faster performance in general. Wear better screens pretty easily. As I was writing this review, I saw a 2019 XPS 13 with a 4K screen for $900. That, at the very least, the Surface Laptop Go proves that Microsoft can make a capable budget notebook. It may not have all the bells and whistles you'd want from a more powerful ultra portable, but for under $1,000, it's a pretty solid deal. And after the disappointment of the Surface Go 2, it's nice to have a cheaper Surface that I may actually be able to recommend to people. Stay tuned to Engadget.com for more of our Surface reviews and laptop reviews, and if you dug this video, be sure to like and subscribe.
you.